The late afternoon sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Noah Carter's penthouse, bathing the space in a golden glow. Outside, the city pulsed with life, horns blaring, people weaving through crowded sidewalks. But inside, all was quiet. Noah sat at his sleek, black desk, sipping his espresso and scrolling through his email. His company, Titan Tech, was thriving. His latest acquisition was making headlines, and his inbox was flooded with congratulations from industry peers. A notification pinged on his phone. It was a text from Elena. "Can't wait for dinner tonight. Love you." Noah smiled, typing a quick reply. "Love you too. I'll grab the wine." Elena was the best thing that had ever happened to him. Where his world was structured and predictable, she brought lightness and spontaneity. Her laughter echoed in his mind, a melody he never tired of hearing. He set his phone down and leaned back, staring at the framed photo on his desk. It was from their wedding day, a picture-perfect scene of Elena in her lace gown, her auburn hair falling in soft waves, and Noah in his tailored tuxedo. She'd looked at him like he was her entire world. But as his gaze lingered, the faintest shadow of doubt crept in. The first crack appeared a week earlier. Noah had been reviewing their joint bank statements, a routine task to ensure their accounts were balanced. He prided himself on meticulousness, every cent accounted for. But then he saw it, a $2,400 charged to a baby boutique. Confused, he had called Elena into his office. "Do you know what this is?" he asked, pointing at the screen. Elena leaned over his shoulder, her floral perfume filling the air. "Oh, that! It's a stroller. Mia's baby shower is coming up, remember? I wanted to get her something special." He frowned. "Mia? I thought she lived in Chicago." "She does," Elena said smoothly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I had it shipped directly to her." Noah wanted to press further but stopped himself. Elena's tone was light, her explanation casual. There was no reason not to believe her. Still, a faint unease lingered in the back of his mind. Now, a week later, that unease gnawed at him again. It started with a package. Noah had returned early from a meeting and spotted the delivery man walking away as he stepped into the apartment. "Thanks," Noah called, grabbing the box off the floor. His name wasn't on it. It was addressed to Elena. The sender was listed as Bright Horizons, a company he didn't recognize. Curiosity got the better of him. He carried the box inside, setting it on the kitchen counter. Elena arrived an hour later, her heels clicking against the polished wood floors. She was radiant, as always, dressed in a flowing emerald blouse and tailored slacks. "What's this?" Noah asked, gesturing to the package. Elena's face didn't flicker. She walked over, glanced at the label, and laughed. "Oh, just some toys for Mia's baby. I forgot I ordered them." "That baby's getting quite the haul," Noah said lightly, though his eyes searched hers. Elena grinned and kissed his cheek. "Anything for a friend. She unpacked the box as they talked, pulling out a stuffed elephant and a set of wooden blocks. It all seemed harmless enough, but Noah couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Later that night, as Elena slept soundly beside him, Noah lay awake. The memory of the baby boutique charge and the package swirled in his mind. He hated feeling suspicious. It wasn't like him. Elena had always been generous, thoughtful, but the pieces didn't quite fit. On a whim, he grabbed his laptop from the nightstand and quietly opened it. He searched for Bright Horizons, scrolling past ads until he found their website. It wasn't a baby store. It was a logistics company specializing in discreet deliveries. Noah's heart began to race. What could Elena possibly need from a company like this? He closed the laptop, his thoughts a tangled web of doubt. He resolved to let it go, to trust her. But deep down, he knew he wouldn't. Because something about Elena's perfect smile no longer felt real. Chapter 2. The Whisper of Doubt. Noah sat at his kitchen island the next morning, staring at his untouched coffee. The Bright Horizons website still lingered in his mind, an echo of a door creaking open to something he couldn't quite see. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the unease. Maybe he was overreacting. Elena hummed as she walked into the kitchen, her auburn hair tied into a loose ponytail. She wore a casual sundress, effortlessly elegant as always. "You're up early," she said, leaning in to kiss his cheek. "Couldn't sleep," Noah admitted, his voice measured. She frowned, concern flickering in her green eyes. "Work stress?" "Something like that," he said, managing a smile. Elena squeezed his shoulder and began making a smoothie. As the blender whirred, Noah watched her. She moved with an ease that was almost hypnotic, her laughter bright and effortless. She seemed normal, happy, but appearances could be deceiving. Later that day, Noah found himself at his office staring at his phone. He had an impeccable memory, and yet the details of Elena's story kept slipping through his fingers. He scrolled through his call log and dialed Mia, Elena's friend in Chicago. "Hello?" Mia answered after a few rings. "Hi, Mia, this is Noah, Elena's husband." "Oh, hi. It's nice to hear from you." Her voice was warm but surprised. "I just wanted to check something. Did you get the stroller Elena sent for the baby shower?" There was a pause. "Stroller?" "Yes, she said she sent one from a boutique." "Oh," Mia hesitated. "I didn't have a baby shower, and we haven't gotten a stroller from her. Are you sure it was for me?" Noah's stomach sank. "Must have been a mix-up. Sorry to bother you." After hanging up, he leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Elena had lied. That evening, Noah tried to act normal. Over dinner, Elena chatted about her day, her hands gesturing animatedly as she told him about a new boutique she'd discovered. Noah nodded, even laughed at her jokes, but his thoughts were elsewhere. When she excused herself to take a shower, he saw his opportunity. He slipped into her home office, a space she rarely used but kept meticulously tidy. The desk drawers were locked, but Noah had seen where she kept the keys. He unlocked the drawer and rifled you through the contents. Bills, receipts, and correspondence, all neatly organized. Then he found it, a folder labeled Expenses. Inside were bank statements from an account he didn't recognize. They showed transfers from his business account, small amounts at first, then larger ones, all sent to an unfamiliar name, Alice Monroe. Noah's chest tightened. Who was Alice? Noah didn't sleep that night. He stayed in his study, staring at the evidence. By the time the first rays of sunlight crept through the windows, he knew what he had to do. He needed help. Daniel Harper's office was tucked away in an unassuming building downtown. Noah stepped into the dimly lit space, his pulse hammering. A tall man with salt and pepper hair and a grizzled expression stood behind the desk. He wore a crisp shirt rolled up to his elbows and had a presence that spoke of quiet authority. "Noah Carter," Daniel said, shaking his hand. "What brings you here?" Noah hesitated, unsure of where to begin. Finally, he said, "I think my wife is hiding something. I need to know what." Daniel studied him, his sharp eyes narrowing. "Hiding what exactly?" "I don't know," Noah admitted, "but I found transfers from my account to someone named Alice Monroe, and—" He trailed off, feeling foolish. "I think she might have another life." Daniel leaned back, his expression unreadable. "You think she's cheating?" "I think it's more than that," Noah said quietly. "I need to know the truth." Daniel agreed to take the case, and within a few days, the first report came back. "She's been making frequent trips to Westbrook," Daniel said during their next meeting. He slid a manila folder across the desk. Noah opened it, his stomach nodding as he saw the photos. Elena was standing on the porch of a modest suburban home, holding a bag of groceries. Two children played in the yard. A man was mowing the lawn, a man who wasn't Noah. "She's been visiting this address regularly for months," Daniel continued. "The man's name is Eric Monroe, and those are their kids." Noah stared at the photos, his world spinning. "They're kids?" Daniel nodded. "Looks like she's been living a double life." Noah closed the folder, his hands trembling. The woman he loved, the woman he thought he knew, was a stranger. Chapter 3. Beneath the surface. Noah couldn't remember driving home. The streets blurred together in a haze as Daniel's words echoed in his mind. She's been living a double life. When he arrived at the penthouse, the city lights glittered below, mocking the sense of security he once felt in his home. Elena wasn't there. She'd texted earlier saying she was meeting friends for dinner. It gave him time to think, though his thoughts spiraled relentlessly. Who was Elena, really? He poured himself a scotch and sat in the darkened living room, the manila folder on the coffee table before him. Inside were the photos of her other life, the house, the children, the man. He picked up the picture of Elena smiling on that suburban porch, and it felt like a knife twisting in his chest. How long had she been lying to him? The next morning, Noah decided to follow Elena. He pretended to leave for work but doubled back to watch the building from his car. Sure enough, a little after 10 a.m., she emerged dressed casually in jeans and a blouse. She carried a tote bag, her phone clutched in her hand as she flagged down a taxi. Noah started his car and followed at a distance. The taxi weaved through the city and eventually took the highway toward Westbrook, the same suburb Daniel had mentioned. Noah's pulse quickened as he tailed her, careful to keep his distance. After about 40 minutes, the taxi pulled into the driveway of the same house from the photos. Elena got out, greeted by the man Daniel had identified as Eric Monroe. He kissed her on the cheek as she smiled, then disappeared inside with him. Noah sat frozen in his car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. That evening, Noah confronted Elena. She came home late, her cheeks flushed as if she'd been laughing. "Sorry I'm so late," she called, setting her purse down on the kitchen counter. Noah stood in the shadows of the living room watching her. "How was dinner?" She froze, her smile faltering. "It was fine. Why?" "Who did you meet?" he asked, his voice calm but icy. Elena's eyes darted to him, then away. "Just some girlfriends. You know, the usual." Noah stepped forward, holding up the photo of her with Eric and the children. "Were you with them?" Elena's face drained of color. For a moment she said nothing, her mouth opening as if to speak, but no sound coming out. Then she recovered, her expression hardening. "Where did you get that?" "Does it matter?" Noah snapped. "You've been lying to me, Elena. Who are they?" "They're no one," she said quickly. Too quickly. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "No one?" He laughed bitterly. "Then why are you funneling my money into their accounts? Why are you kissing him on the porch of his house?" Elena's mask cracked. "Noah, you don't understand." "Then make me understand," he roared, slamming the photo onto the counter. She stepped back, her eyes glistening with tears. "They're my family," she said softly. "My kids." Noah staggered, as if she'd punched him. "Your kids?" Elena nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I married young. Eric and I. We had 2 children, but he ruined us. He gambled everything away, left us with nothing." Her voice trembled, but Noah heard no sincerity. "I had no choice, Noah. I had to take care of them. I needed your help." "So you lied to me?" he interrupted. "You married me, stole from me, and lived a lie?" "I didn't mean for it to happen this way," Elena said, her voice breaking. "At first it was about survival, but then I fell in love with you." Noah's laugh was hollow. "Love? Is that what you call this?" Elena reached for him, but he stepped back. "You have to believe me, Noah. I did it for my children. I couldn't let them suffer because of Eric's mistakes." Her words clawed at his heart, but he couldn't ignore the cold logic beneath them. She hadn't come to him out of love. She'd come with a plan. Noah spent the next few days in a fog of anger and confusion. He wanted to believe Elena's story, but her lies had poisoned everything. Even her tears felt calculated. Meanwhile, Daniel continued digging. "She's been funneling money to multiple accounts," Daniel reported during their next meeting. "It's not just the Monroe family. There are others, business investments, offshore accounts. She's been planning this for a long time." Noah clenched his fists. "What do I do?" "You take control," Daniel said firmly. "Freeze your accounts. Gather evidence. When this blows up, You'll want the law on your side. That night, as Elena slept, Noah stood in the doorway of their bedroom, watching her. For the first time, he didn't see the woman he loved. He saw a stranger. He'd given her everything, his trust, his love, his life, and she'd used it all against him. But she didn't know one thing. He wasn't going to let her win. Chapter 4. Building the Trap. Noah spent the next week preparing for war. Every smile he gave Elena, every kiss he returned, was a performance. Each time she laughed or held his hand, he felt the sting of betrayal like a fresh wound. But he kept his anger buried deep, waiting for the right moment to strike. With Daniel's help, he began to unravel the full extent of her deception. The offshore accounts, the secret investments, the slow siphoning of funds from his company, all of it pointed to a meticulous plan designed to leave him ruined. Noah had always prided himself on being a builder. Now he would rebuild, but first he had to destroy. Noah visited his lawyer, Henry Markham, under the guise of discussing business expansion. After an hour of small talk, Noah finally revealed the real reason for his visit. "I need to protect my assets," he said, his tone grim. Henry raised an eyebrow. "Why? Is Titan Tech in trouble?" "No," Noah said firmly, "but my marriage is." He explained the situation, leaving out no detail. Henry listened in silence, his expression growing darker as the story unfolded. "Freezing the accounts is simple," Henry said, "but if she's been transferring funds to offshore accounts, recovery could be tricky. Do you have proof?" Noah handed over the folder of documents Daniel had compiled. Henry skimmed through it, nodding. "This is solid. If you want, I can start the process today." "Do it," Noah said without hesitation. While Henry handled the legal side, Noah decided to take matters into his own hands. He wanted to meet Eric Monroe, the man who had been living off his money. Daniel arranged for them to meet in a small coffee shop in Westbrook. Eric had no idea who he was about to meet. Noah arrived early, his nerves taut like a coiled spring. A few minutes later, Eric walked in. He was tall and lean, with a slightly disheveled appearance and a tired expression. "Eric Monroe?" Noah asked, standing. Eric looked confused but nodded. "Yeah, who's asking?" "Noah Carter," he said, extending a hand. "Elena's husband." The blood drained from Eric's face. He sat down without shaking Noah's hand, his eyes wide with panic. I don't know what you're talking about." "Cut the act," Noah said coldly. "I know everything. The money, the lies, the double life. You've been living off me, and I want to know why." Eric hesitated, his hands trembling. "Look, man, this wasn't my idea. Elena, she told me she'd take care of everything. I didn't even know she was married to you until recently." "Recently?" Noah's voice was razor sharp. "And you didn't think to stop her?" Eric looked away, shame flickering across his face. "She said it was for the kids. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to lose her again." "Again?" Noah leaned forward, his tone low and dangerous. Eric swallowed hard. "She left me once before, after I screwed up with the gambling. I thought this was our second chance." Noah's jaw tightened. "You're either the most gullible man I've ever met, or you're just as complicit as she is." Eric's silence said everything. Noah decided the confrontation with Elena would take place in public. He needed witnesses, people who could see her for who she really was. The perfect opportunity arose when Elena suggested attending a charity gala together. "It's good for networking," she said, smiling as she adjusted his tie. Noah agreed, hiding the storm brewing inside him. The night of the gala, Noah dressed in his finest suit, playing the role of the devoted husband. Elena was radiant in a crimson gown, her charm on full display as she mingled with the city's elite. Noah stayed close, his patience like a taut wire ready to snap. As the evening wore on, he took the stage under the pretense of making a donation announcement. Elena looked up at him, her smile warm and expectant. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Noah began, his voice steady. "It's an honor to support such an important cause. But before I make my announcement, I'd like to share something personal." The room grew quiet. Elena's smile faltered. "Many of you know my wife, Elena. Noah said, gesturing toward her. She's been a pillar of grace and strength in my life. Or so I thought. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as Noah's voice hardened. What you don't know is that Elena has been living a double life. She's stolen from me, lied to me, and betrayed everything I believed about our marriage. Elena's face turned ashen. Noah, she hissed, rising from her seat. What are you doing? He ignored her, holding up the folder Daniel had prepared. In this folder is evidence of her fraud, bank statements, transfers, even photos of her other family. She's been using my money to fund her secret life, and tonight I'm putting an end to it. Gasps filled the room. Noah, stop! Elena cried, but it was too late. Security guards prearranged by Noah stepped forward. Elena Carter, one of them said, you're under arrest for fraud and embezzlement. Elena was escorted out in handcuffs, her protest drowned by the whispers of the crowd. Noah watched her go, a mixture of triumph and sorrow in his chest. The following days were a blur of media frenzy and legal proceedings. Elena's accounts were frozen, her assets seized. Eric Monroe cooperated with the investigation, providing additional evidence that sealed her fate. But even as the dust settled, Noah couldn't shake the lingering question. Had Elena acted alone? One morning, a plain envelope arrived at his door. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message. You've uncovered part of the truth, but the game isn't over. Noah stared at the note, his pulse quickening. Who else was involved? Chapter 5, The Shadows of Conspiracy. The note burned in Noah's hand like a live wire. He read it again, searching for some clue, some hint of its origin. The message was typed on plain paper, the envelope unmarked, with no return address. He handed it to Daniel Harper later that day. What do you make of this? Daniel frowned as he read it. It's a warning, but also a taunt. Whoever sent this wants you to know there's more at play, but they're not ready to show their hand. Do you think it's Victor? Noah asked, his voice tense. Victor Alvarez had emerged during Daniel's investigation as one of Elena's silent partners in her financial schemes. A wealthy investor with a reputation for walking the line between legal and illegal dealings, Victor was a ghost, always present but impossible to pin down. Daniel sighed. It could be. Alvarez thrives on chaos. If he was involved, this is his way of keeping you on edge. But we can't rule out other players. Noah felt a deep unease settling over him. Elena was behind bars, her empire dismantled, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that the web was far larger than he'd imagined. Determined to find answers, Noah doubled down on uncovering the truth. He spent hours combing through financial records, legal documents, and personal files Daniel had gathered. Every piece of evidence seemed to lead back to Elena, but the note suggested otherwise. Late one night, as Noah sifted through a stack of emails recovered from Elena's encrypted laptop, he found a curious thread. It was between Elena and an anonymous address labeled only as Vanguard. The messages were cryptic. Vanguard. Transfer complete. Awaiting confirmation. Elena. Funds received. Next steps? Vanguard. Maintain course. Disruption creates opportunity. Noah's stomach twisted. The emails were dated months before Elena's arrest, suggesting she had been working with someone far more organized and deliberate than Eric Monroe. He forwarded the thread to Daniel, who responded within minutes. Daniel, we've got a lead. Vanguard's IP traces to a private server registered to Alvarez Holdings. Daniel arranged a meeting with Victor Alvarez, though it required some maneuvering. Alvarez, a man of few words and many layers of protection, agreed to meet in a private club under the condition that Noah came alone. The club was opulent, filled with soft lighting and muted jazz. Victor sat at a corner table, sipping an amber liquid from a crystal glass. He was impeccably dressed, his silver hair slicked back, his dark eyes sharp and assessing. Noah Carter, Victor said as Noah approached. You're either very brave or very foolish. I'll let you decide, Noah replied, sitting across from him. Victor smirked. To what do I owe the pleasure? You know why I'm here, Noah said, leaning forward. You worked with Elena. You helped her siphon my money. I want to know why. Victor swirled his drink, his expression unreadable. I didn't help Elena. I provided her with opportunities. She was ambitious, resourceful, and willing to take risks. That's rare. Is that what you call fraud? Noah shot back. Victor's smirk faded. Call it what you want. Elena was a small part of a much larger game. You, Noah, you were a piece on the board. A lucrative one, but a piece nonetheless. The cryptic response only fueled Noah's anger. What game? What are you after? Victor set his glass down and met Noah's gaze. Power, Mr. Carter. Money isn't the end, it's the means. You were simply in the way. Noah left the meeting shaken. Victor's words confirmed his fears. Elena's betrayal wasn't personal. It was strategic. He had been targeted, not as a man, but as an opportunity. The next day, Daniel called with more troubling news. We found more encrypted files on Elena's laptop, Daniel said. They're heavily redacted, but it looks like she was preparing to liquidate your assets entirely. Victor may have been pulling strings, but Elena was ready to cut you loose and disappear. Noah clenched his jaw. How do we stop him? Daniel hesitated. Victor's untouchable. He uses proxies for everything. Shell companies, offshore accounts, middlemen. We need more than suspicion to bring him down. Determined not to let Victor get away, Noah devised a bold plan. He would turn the tables using Victor's own tactics against him. Noah hosted a high-profile tech conference in New York, inviting industry leaders, investors, and, through Daniel's careful maneuvering, Victor Alvarez himself. The conference was an elaborate ruse. Noah had hired a team of cybersecurity experts to monitor every interaction, every transaction, every whisper. Victor arrived, his air of confidence unshaken. As he mingled with guests, Noah watched from a distance, waiting for the moment when the trap would close. By the end of the night, Noah's team had uncovered enough evidence to link Victor to multiple fraudulent schemes. Using forged contracts, altered bank records, and insider trading, Victor had orchestrated a network of financial crimes, using people like Elena as pawns. Noah handed the evidence to the authorities, who moved swiftly. Days later, Victor Alvarez was arrested in a dramatic raid that made headlines across the country. With Victor behind bars and Elena's schemes fully exposed, Noah finally felt a sense of closure. The wounds of betrayal were still fresh, but he had reclaimed his life and his dignity. As he stood in his penthouse staring out at the city, he allowed himself a small smile. The web of deception had unraveled, but he had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to rebuild. Chapter 6. Rebuilding Trust. The days following Victor Alvarez's arrest were a whirlwind of media attention and legal proceedings. Noah found himself at the center of it all, not only as the victim of an elaborate scheme, but as the man who had brought one of the most elusive financial criminals to justice. The headlines painted him as a hero, but Noah didn't feel like one. He'd lost more than money. He'd lost faith in the woman he loved and in his own judgment. Elena, still in custody, refused to cooperate with investigators. Her trial was set for months down the road, and Noah was determined to be there when she faced justice. But for now, he focused on reclaiming his life. Noah decided to take some time away from the city. The constant noise, the flashing cameras, and the whispers of betrayal were suffocating. He retreated to a lakeside cabin he owned, a place he hadn't visited in years. There, in the stillness of nature, he found a semblance of peace. The mornings were quiet, the evenings serene, and the hours in between gave him time to reflect. One afternoon, Susan, his older sister, visited. She brought groceries in her usual no-nonsense attitude. "You look like hell," she said, unpacking bags onto the kitchen counter. "Good to see you too," Noah replied, managing a small smile. Susan sat across from him, her expression softening. "You've been through a lot, Noah. No one would blame you for taking time to process." "That's what I'm doing," he said, gesturing to the cabin around him. "You're hiding," Susan corrected. "You can't let what Elena did define you. You're better than that." Her words lingered long after she left. A few weeks later, Noah received word that Elena had requested a meeting. Against his better judgment, he agreed to see her. The visitation room at the county jail was cold and sterile. Elena sat on the other side of the glass, her once polished appearance now faded. She looked thinner, her eyes hollow, but her beauty remained, a cruel reminder of the woman he had once loved. "Noah," she said, her voice trembling as she picked up the phone. He didn't reply at first, simply studying her. Finally, he spoke. "Why?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought I could control it, keep it from hurting you." Noah shook his head. "You didn't think about me at all. You saw an opportunity and took it." Elena sobbed, pressing her hand to the glass. "I loved you, Noah. I still do. Please, believe me." "No," he said, his voice steady. "You loved control. You loved the life I gave you. But love? That's something you can't fake." Her face crumpled, but Noah felt no satisfaction in her tears. He simply stood, placed the phone down, and walked away. Months turned into a year. Elena was sentenced to a lengthy prison term for fraud and embezzlement, and Victor Alvarez faced multiple charges that ensured he would never see the light of day. Noah returned to his work, pouring his energy into rebuilding Titan Tech. The company had weathered the storm, and under his leadership, it began to thrive once more. But more importantly, Noah began to rebuild himself. One evening, Noah stood on the balcony of his penthouse, a glass of wine in hand. The city stretched before him, its lights glittering like stars. For the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of calm. He thought about Elena, about Victor, about the web of lies that had nearly destroyed him. And then he let it go. Noah had survived. He had learned. And now he was ready to move forward, not as a victim, but as a man who had reclaimed his power. Months later, a letter arrived at Noah's office. It bore no return address, just like the first. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a simple message. "You were never the target. The game continues." Noah folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. The words didn't rattle him this time, because now he was ready for whatever came next.